What an amazing lineup of films this year. Let's meet our filmmakers straight away. We'll start with Florian Henkel von Donnersmarck. This is his third feature film. Welcome. Great to see Florian with Never Look Away. From Japan, one of the most prolific filmmakers in the world, thankfully, Hirokazu Koreeda. A man who needs no introduction, Alfonso Cuarón. Also with her third film from Lebanon, an actress and a brilliant director, Nadine Labaki. And I'm probably our youngest filmmaker with an exceptional first film from Belgium, Lucas Dont. Please sit down. Let me just shout out a couple of people in the audience. We have the producer of Shoplifters here, Kaoru Mazuzaki. Can you just give us a wave? The producer and the composer of Capernaum, Khaled Muzanar. Welcome. The producer of Never Look Away, Corinne Berg. And Florian, would you like to introduce your two actors who are here?
Yes, so we have a person that I've been wanting to work with for many years, an amazing actor. Nobody knows exactly what, what his specific mystery is. He's someone that you just love watching. It's Tom Schilling. Would you stand up there? And then someone where I'm very happy that he's agreed to work with me a second time. He was the lead in The Lives of Others. And I said to him before writing this, only if you play the villain in this piece can I actually write it, because I needed his charm and his just actor brilliance, Sebastian Koch. And we also have another producer of the Never Look Away here, my wife Christiana Henkel von Donnersmarck.
So I want to get started. It's very hard to sort of draw parallels between 5 such different films, but I wanted to get started by roughly talking about the notion of family, which seems to sort of come up in all of the films fairly strongly, all in different ways. Alfonso, let's start with you. Obviously, this is based on your own family. Why do you think family is something that people are looking at in cinema at the moment? Well, in these strange times in the world.
If you frame the question from the standpoint of these times, it's clear that family is the only structure that still remains, and remains pretty much intact. And I guess that's a simple answer to that. Is in a moment in which structures are falling apart and deceiveness abounds, families keep on being immune from that.
And why at this particular time in your career did you want to tell this story about your family?
Age.
It was the right time.
Yeah, it's a moment in life in which you want to come to terms of who you are based upon where you come from. But not only in terms of family, also in terms of the place that nurtured you, your culture.
Because it's not just about your family. Obviously, it's about the maid who was part of your life.
Well, she's my family.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh well, I'm part of her family. to phrase it properly.
So it's not just literal family, is it? As Koreeda-san's film is all about too. It's what we feel as our family. There's no question really. I was just musing. But Koreeda-san, to talk about shoplifters, obviously this is a real family, but it's not a real family. Why did you want to tell this story about this particular family?
I wonder why.
この10年ぐらいファミリードラマというのをやってきている中で、やはり血縁を超えてつながろうとする人たちの物語というのをやってみたいなと。血以外の何でつながることが可能なんだろうかっていうことを今回は自分なりに考えてみたいなというふうに思ったのがスタートだったんですけど。
The start for this movie was, in a sense, over the past 10 years, I have been creating, my films have always been about family drama. And I wanted this time to look at what it was like when families came together who were not connected by blood. What would connect them if they were not blood ties? And that is what I wanted to explore in this film.
And you literally put them together as a family and put them in a house together and they behave as a family. So you consider that a real family?
そうですね。彼らがああいう形で世間に知られるようになった時に、おそらく私たちはあんなものは家族ではないというふうに批判をして、映画の中でそうなったように解体されていくんだろうなと思うんですけれども、じゃあ私たちが彼ら以上の深いつながりを持った家族を今持てているだろうかっていう問いかけが映画の登場人物から見てる私たちに逆に語りかけられるような、そんな映画にしたいなと思いました。
Yes, that's correct. But in a sense, at the same time, I also wanted to look at this from society's point of view. What would we think about it? So in the beginning, as we watch the movie, we feel very much connected to their connection. And then once society's perspective is brought into it, which would probably have been our own as well, everything starts to fall apart and we find that we judge them. And I think that this is the way it would have been. And that was sort of the question that I wanted to look at better, to what exactly would have happened in this kind of case. And that's what I explored in the film.
Nadine, obviously your film is an angry film about a very dysfunctional family. It's not dissimilar to Shoplifters in the sense, but these are people bound by blood ties. Where did you come up with this concept?
I think it almost felt this time like a duty to me to talk about this very important bonding, to talk about this very solid start in life, usually in general for any child. And I, during my 4 years of research, when we were researching to make the film, the igniting point was really to understand what is the behind the scene of a child that you see on the street, a child who is working, a child who is begging, a child who is left alone or who is homeless. Where does he go when he disappears around the corner? Who is his family? How does it work within his family? What draws him, or what is his daily struggle? So it was very important. And during this research, obviously because I read a lot of studies and I researched a lot, and I've understood how important this bond is and how really it defines your personality. It really is decided from 0 to 6 years. This is where your personality is in a way formed, and it's that bonding that makes it all possible. And when this is dysfunctional, unfortunately, we cannot generalize, but unfortunately, in 75% of the cases, the result is failure. I'm not talking about success or financial success in life. I'm talking about who you become. And unfortunately, in 75% of the cases, the result is delinquency, is perversion, is the abuser, the abused become the abuser. It's a vicious circle, and that they can't get out of. So it was really very, very important for me to talk about this very specific problem.
And the child, obviously, how old is the boy in the film?
He's when we started shooting, he was 12. Yeah, now he's.
But the
14.
character's also around there.
Yes.
And he obviously takes a stand against his parents.
Yes, he takes a
conceit
stand
of it.
against his parents, and he decides to sue them for giving him life in this world that is not giving him any tool to survive, that is not giving him any chance or any of his basic rights in order for him to survive. And he's actually, through his parents, obviously he's suing the whole world. He's suing us as adults, he's suing the systems, he's suing the government, he's suing every one of us who have failed him. Through his parents, obviously, because it's the only way he can. In a way, he's saying, you don't deserve me. You don't deserve me to exist in your lives. Unfortunately, yeah.
The honor and the responsibility of having a child.
Sorry?
The honor and the responsibility
Of course,
having a child.
the sacred nature of a child that unfortunately sometimes we forget, not us, but many. I mean, we're talking about 1 billion children across the world who are living deprived from their most basic rights, deprived from schools, deprived from anything really for them in order to survive. So yes, sometimes we forget, and some parents, unfortunately, and the governments and the systems forget the sacred nature of a child. A child is not anything that you just bring to the world and you expect them to just survive and live. We have to make this world a better place for them in order to flourish and survive. And we have to acknowledge the fact that these children are growing up very angry. Sometimes angry to the extent of becoming completely numb. They don't feel anything anymore. They've been so neglected. They're in a state of trauma that really puts them in a state that they don't feel anything anymore. They're numb. So what's going to happen to those children that are going to grow up one day? And who are they going to be?
By contrast, the lead character in Girl, Lucas's film, Nora, is for all the challenges and anxieties she faces, she has a great family life. She has a wonderful father.
Yeah.
And that is the least of her difficulties.
Yeah. Well, in 2009, I met the girl, the young trans girl that inspired this film to be made. She made a big impact on me and really nourished this film to become what it is. But also meeting her father really had an impact on me because he really is an example of a father figure that supports his child, that wants his child to be as happy as she can, and that doesn't question her identity. And I think so many times father figures are represented in media as problematic figures. And in a way, I really wanted the relationship in this film between a father and the main character to be loving and supporting, and in a way an homage to the relationship that I saw in front of me between Nora and her father, but also the relationship that I have with my father. And I'm just excited about seeing LGBT cinema in which the relationships with the parents can be less problematic as they have maybe been before.
It's true, it's almost a cliche, isn't it, that you're going to have angry parents in
Yeah.
movies, you know?
Yeah, and in a way it's also what you start to expect. I mean, if you look at a lot of young people go watch cinema or watch movies, and then if those relationships with parents are represented as problematic, then, I mean, you take something from that. That doesn't mean we cannot show that, because in a lot of cases it is that way. but yeah, it excited me to show a different type of relationship.
Florian, in the epic story of Never Look Away, I think the legacy of Kurt's sister stayed with me throughout the whole film. You know, this is really a film about siblings and about the impact of World War II, I suppose, on this family.
Yeah, I was thinking when you asked that question about family, I thought it was such an interesting theme, and yes, I mean, in some way, it's the one thing that I think we can never break free from, and in some way we have to break free from it because, of course, we are shaped by our parents and in a very certain way, according to their convictions, and those might not be the convictions that are completely right for us. And so, in a way, one of our main tasks in life is to try and find out what parts of what we were taught are good for us and good for our soul and good for our personal path. And so here in this film, you have someone who has to break free from. I mean, the male protagonist has to break free from, a society that has shaped him. First, the Nazis trying to instrumentalize his art in a certain way, and then the communists trying to instrumentalize it in a certain way, and then he's in the West, he's free, and he has to try and find his own truth as an artist. And the female protagonist, she has to just break free from her family. Her family is this, her father is this terrible Nazi who, however, very, very firmly believes in all this. And in a way, both of them escape their pasts and their formations with the help of art. And that's I was really thinking about that over the past days because I really thought, as a filmmaker, when the film comes out, you're always asked, what is the film is about? And I thought, I was never happy with any of the answers that I gave. And I thought, what is it really about? And then I thought, I just came up with this thought that actually it's about how art can help us overcome political extremism, and how it's how it's a wonderful tool to do that, because art can shift our perspective about things, and so in the end, in this in the film, he manages to break free from the political extremism, and she manages to use the art, in a way, his art, to break free from her family and from the extremism that exists in there.
It's inspired by the real life story of Gerhard Richter. Tell us a little bit about what does inspired by mean in this case? How real is it?
Well, I mean, it's so my agreement with Gerhard Richter was that that's a question I wouldn't answer because we had he was very generous with his time and told me a lot of things and let me record everything over all our conversations over the course of many weeks. But he, our agreement was that I wouldn't say what parts were true and he wouldn't say which parts were invented, so that's up to you to speculate. But I'll tell you, I mean, of course, the things that are already matter of public record from his biographies. I mean, I was inspired to write the film because of the discovery a journalist made, so I hadn't really known Gerhard Richter's work that well. I'd known there was one very beautiful painting of a young, beautiful woman holding a little baby in her arms, and he had first released that as mother and child because that's what it looks like, a very young mother with a child, and it's painted in this blurry photographic style, kind of mysterious, like you can never really see what's there, and and then later he said that this was actually not his mother, but was his aunt, his mother's youngest sister, who was later murdered by the Nazis because she developed schizophrenia, and the Nazis had this so-called eugenics program where they got rid of everybody that they felt didn't have the right hereditary material to build a strong race. So they killed countless people in this. And it's one of the things that I loved about this painting was that it gave those victims of that crime a face. And so, what I didn't know, what even Gerhard Richter didn't know, and what a journalist found out when Richter was already in his 70s, he's now 86, still doing his best work, by the way. And he is what he found out was that the father of the woman that Gerhard Richter ended up marrying, and of whom he made many incredibly beautiful paintings, that this father had been a high-ranking SS doctor and the head of the eugenics program for that region of Dresden. And I thought, wow, this is really an interesting premise, that here you would have a young artist who, it's so hard to find your way as a young artist, and living under the same roof as the person who caused the very trauma that may have been part of what turned him into an artist. And I thought it would be a great opportunity to show the obstacles that someone faces to break free from family, break free from power, and somehow find his own voice. And I thought it would be a great opportunity for Tom Schilling and Sebastian Koch, two actors that I really love, to face off against each other.
So he didn't know till he was 70. He didn't know until he was 70 years old that
he didn't
his
know.
father-in-law.
And and the interesting thing is, if you look at his work, if you look at the paintings, you think he must have known. But because he did these mysterious paintings. For example, there's one painting that, only after I found out all this, it became so haunting. It's a very famous painting that he did of his father-in-law at the beach with his family as a young man. And you think, why would he paint this silly family snapshot? And then you find out it was painted at the exact same time that he sent Richter's aunt to her sterilization and death. Gosh. And it kind of gets, but he didn't know it. It's just, I do think that there is such a thing as, I think that artistic intuition is a different kind of knowledge. It's you might not know things consciously, but you know them. I mean, I find that in any form of art. I mean, take acting. You take the great actors, and you think, my God, can anybody know that much about human nature? They know more than any, psychiatry professor in the world. They'll know every little last tick. They'll be able to see what someone turns into if shaped by certain events. But it's not a knowledge in that they could, write a book about it and analyze it. They know it on an instinctual level. And I think on that same instinctual level, Richter knew about his father-in-law. He sensed it, but he was only able to express it through his art. And on a conscious level, he only knew it through the incredible work of this journalist who just, actually, Richter only became very famous in his 70s when the Museum of Modern Art in New York did a big retrospective of his work. And suddenly his prices, I mean, he was struggling, and suddenly, his prices
he
went
wasn't
up.
struggling.
Well, I mean, he was certainly someone who didn't feel, secure, and suddenly he became, his prices went up to astronomical levels, and after that there was renewed interest in him in Germany, and this great reporter took it on him to write a very detailed profile, looked into his family's past. He says you cannot look at anyone without looking at their family to find out who they are, and he found out about the SS connection.
So you did reveal actually quite a lot about how closely the film tells.
But this is all matter of record. That's all matter of record. So I mean, in a way, what these are the things that are in the biographies. This is in the text and all that. What was, and the weeks that I spent with him were about psychological details and specific events and so on.
Alfonso, talking about there's these true stories. Only Florian and yours are true stories. But how much of your film is poetry? How much of it is true recollection? What were you trying to set about to do in terms of recreating your own memories and your own childhood?
A big percentage, I don't know, 80, 90%, it comes out of my memories or the memories of Libo. Libo is the person upon whom the character of Cleo is based. But then, because it was very clear that the drive was going to be, is not a plot-driven film. It's more about moments and themes. So I fictionalized certain situations to incorporate society at large. Now, saying that is my memory doesn't mean that it's not fiction, because there's nothing more liar than memory. That memory is the biggest liar. And so most of these memories, at least I share the lie with my sister and with Libo. But I would never dare to say that's the thing, the way things happen.
I just want to ask you, there's been a great deal of talk about your relationship with Netflix on this film, and I don't want to get into that, but I do want to talk about the poetry of cinema, really, the art of cinema, and I don't think that's whether to do with it's on a big screen or a small screen. It's about the creation of the filmmaker, you know, and there's no film like Roma in showing you how poetry can be infused into storytelling on film. So, how do you define cinema, you know, when you're making a film?
Well, I have faith in cinema as a language, you know, and as a language that stands on its own. I have a problem when they talk about cinema as stories. Cinema are films, you know, and in which stories can be a tool of cinema. There are many films that they don't have stories, and they're fantastic. You know, stories is a tool that for certain kind of cinema is very important. But there are many other tools. You know, there's sound, there's color, there's music, there's performance. You know, and for me the important thing is to honor that language. In this specific film, I wanted to honor something I think that it's an art that flows in time, and I wanted to honor the sense of time. I wanted to honor the sense of space and the sense of time, because thematically is what I was after. I was memory and going into, you know, in a more pretentious way, it was about existence also, and that's where our existence flows. It flows in time and space. That in one hand it constrains us, because we can only be in a place and a time in a moment, but also creates those bonds of affection, you know. And so I wanted to really honor that sense of time and space. Time in the sense of allowing time to unfold, and space by not honoring only what is in the camera, but the sense of a space that transcends the camera. You know, is that place that sometimes is in our perception, but we are not there.
I mean, I think all the films actually are about space. I mean, you get a real sense of space in the family house in Shoplifters, or in the two houses really in Capernaum, in the dance studio or in the art studio. And I think that sense of geography is very important for the viewer to understand the film.
Yeah, but I see space something beyond just geography. Geography is the three-dimensional way, or two-dimensional if it's a map, in which we absorb space. But there's something pretty much more. It's like time. There's something more metaphysical with about space, and the way in which the space creates spheres of existence. You know, is spheres of existence that sometimes we share a same cosmovision, and sometimes we don't. You know, that's what I was after. Maybe it sounds a little bit abstract.
Just a little. Like, but is it space from the perspective of a child in this film, or is it?
No, it's a space in a more look. It's same as talking about time. Time is not the clicks in your watch. You know, time is a mystery. You know, and space is another mystery. We don't consider so much space of a mystery because we're used to be here at this moment. Nevertheless, there's also there. You know, and anyway.
No, I think I get it. I think I get it.
Don't worry. Yeah, it's also geography.
but I'm interested in Roma in particular. Like, did this come to? Is this what you were setting out to achieve when you wrote Roma, or did that come through the process?
No, it was part of the thing. I mean, filmmakers that I admire, they have that sense of time and space. and
Such
I-
as
Well, I mean, in a more
Tarkovsky.
elevated way, that yes, Tarkovsky is all about time and space. You know, but you see Dreyer and you see Bresson, and it's all. But even if you see Lubitsch, he's doing comedies, but all of those comedies they flow in that time and space. And in Lubitsch is as important the space that is outside the camera as the amazing comedy that is going inside the camera. You know, and most of that space is represented by sound. Lubitsch was amazing doing sound. You know, people have seen always the physical rhythm of each frame, of all the comedy and what it was the Lubitsch touch. But you can also have another sense of a space that is happening elsewhere. You know?
Yeah, I think I get it.
Yeah.
Lucas, in Girl, you create not dissimilar to Roma. In Girl, there's a great sense of it's not a particularly narrative-driven film, is it? You know, it's much more a mood. It's about us getting to know who Nora is.
Yeah.
What did you set out to achieve?
Well, the room, just the dance space, was a very important thing when we were writing the script, and also a part of my attraction to the story when I read it in 2009. Because what I found so interesting was the combination of a young 15-year-old trans girl and the world of the classical dance, which is a world that still to date is very binary, divided in roles for men and roles for women, and plays with this idea of the fairy tale. And then you have this young person that challenges that, and but still wants to be in that world, in that arena. And her literally wanting to be in that space, in that repetition room, which is also a room that is a constant confrontation with a reflection, I found to be very attractive as a filmmaker, and I really found that in that combination, I found a cinematographic way, a poetic way to translate an internal struggle of this young person. And I felt like through the dance scenes that come back a lot of times, there's a lot of repetition literally in this film. I felt like we constantly confronted the audience with this young character trying to find her way in that space.
Is that because of the discipline, the extreme discipline of dance and that?
Yeah, classical dance is an extreme art form. It's I've always been interested also in my short work with the combination of young people, adolescents, and this art form, because when I met a lot of young people training to become classical dancers, they're so extremely focused on their body, on the manipulation of that body, while at the same time they're getting to know their body and their body is changing. And I found that there's a tension there that I really like to work with and that I really like to show on screen.
And she has to be the best girl in the room, doesn't she? You know, she works herself to the bone.
Yeah, I mean, the ballerina is a bit a symbol of perfection, a symbol of this highest classic idea of elegance. And so for me, her trying to obtain that ID, her trying to go for that form was the conflict in this film.
I want to talk a little bit about performance, actually. But we can start with Victor, who is really extraordinary in the film. I mean, how old was he when he made the film with you?
15.
And he's at school.
He's flying right now to come here to be at the ceremony tomorrow.
But he couldn't come yesterday because he was at school.
He was in school, yeah.
How did you get that performance from him? Because is he a professional actor?
He's a professional dancer, so he's in a classical dance school in Antwerp. The casting for this film was the most challenging part of the production, actually, because Nora had been such a vital part of the production process that I always imagined the film with Nora in my mind. So it was very difficult for me to find another young person that I could envision the film with. And then when we were casting for a year and a half, we had over 500 young people come cast. And then at a certain point we met Victor. And I think for all of us, for my team and for Nora and myself, we immediately fell in love with this person. And we immediately saw that it was someone with an extreme discipline because he has been training for so long. He really wants his performance to be the best possible performance he can give. And we found that he had big stress to not be believable because he had never acted before. He felt comfortable with the dance, but with the acting he felt very uncomfortable because he wanted to do Nora justice. He wanted to do trans people justice. He wanted to do me. So he felt this.
Heavy burden.
Yeah, he felt this pressure. And I think what we did was we really entered through the dance. The 3 months before the shoot, he started to learn how to dance on pointe shoes because he had never done that as a male. And this physical fatigue really helped him to go into the other parts of this film. And made him give the performance that he gave.
Koreeda-san, I want to talk to you about some of your actors, some great Japanese actors, Lily Frankie, Ando Sakura, who I think is one of the best actresses in Japan, and the wonderful Kiki Kirin, who sadly has subsequently passed away, who has been in many of your films. How did you work with that ensemble to create the family of shoplifters?
そうですね。どのようにしたんだろうな。何か明快な僕演出のメソッドがあるわけではないので、今回の映画に関して言うと夏にまず家族を集めて、写真を撮らせてもらって夏の前に。で実はキリンさんが亡くなる海のシーンの撮影が、撮影の初日だったんですね。あんまりやらないんです。普通は時間軸に沿って撮ることの方が多いんですけれども、今回の映画はちょっとそこが逆になっていまして、夏のシーンを撮った夏のシーンを繰り返し見ながら脚本を作っていくという。なので脚本が完成してから撮影を始めたわけではなくて、役者に動いてもらって撮ってみて、そこから自分のイマジネーションを膨らませていくっていう、そういうやり方を今回はちょっと特別なやり方ですけどもしています。
I think when I think of how I direct a film, I don't believe that I use a clear method. That, for example, in this particular case, we started the film kind of in a backwards way. We did the scene, which is the summer scene in the film, and got everybody together before that and took some photos and then sort of watched them interact. And so the first day of the film was the summer, which is not chronologically
The beach
correct.
sequence.
Yeah, the beach sequence. And so this started the way I looked at it. I watched them as they interacted on the beach, and based on my observations of what I was looking at, that became the basis for creating the script. So the script didn't exist from the beginning. I was inspired by this short scene that we took and built the script from there through my imagination.
Wow. And that was just one afternoon on the beach.
そうですね。でもそれを繰り返しこう見ながら発見していくですね。演出していくというよりはやっぱり発見していく作業というのがあって、海辺のシーンともう一つ 土砂降りのシーンがあるんですけども、あれもたまたまその前後の撮影で雨が降って、そこからじゃあ雨の中をとりあえずその時はとりあえず走ろうっつって2人に走ってもらって、でその後で2人がじゃあ家に戻ってきた時に親が家で何をしてたら面白いだろうかっていうことをこう逆に雨の中を走るシーンを撮ってから考えていくっていう、ちょっとそういう撮り方をこう許してくれる役者とプロデューサー陣に支えられてようやくできてるやり方だと思うんですけれども、この映画はそういうやり方をして多分それがうまくいったんじゃないかなと思ってます。
So I watched many, many times. So I took the scene, and then after that I would watch it again and again. And every time I watched it, something would come to me again. And in a sense, I didn't direct the film in so much as I discovered the film. And in terms of the rain scene, it's also the same. I just had this, the rain started coming down, I had the two children run ahead, and as they raced to go back home, I then started thinking, what would they find when they went home? What was going on at home as the children raced towards it? And that's where I created the scene of what was happening inside the home. And so I'm very fortunate to have producers and actors who support me in this rather unusual way of directing and allows me to able to do this. And it goes well.
It goes very well. But there is a sense of a real family in this film. I think, as there is in Roma, as in a different way there is in Capernaum. This sense of a lived-in home, especially with Kiki Kirin as the matriarch, as it were. You know, this really warm family environment. It feels like you've sort of rehearsed them, like Mike Lee, for months and months and months. But it's perhaps more organic than that.
No.
そうですね、キリンさんの話をすると長くなるんですけども、台本を読んで現場に来る前に、この映画はあなたが人間の肉体を撮ろうと思ってる映画だというのが分かったから、私の役割としては老いた肉体を晒す必要があるので、入れ歯を外したいっていうことと、髪の毛を洗わずに伸ばしたいっていうふうに彼女から提案があって、でそれをもうそのまま役作りに反映させていただいたんですけれども、非常に僕以上に僕がこの映画でやろうとしていることを鋭く把握して、それを自分の役作りだけではなくて作品全体にこう演出に関してもこうフィードバックしてくれる役者がいるというのは本当に監督にとっては幸せな恵まれた環境だなというふうに思っていて、その彼女がこの去年の9月に亡くなってしまって、まだちょっと、その喪失感からどうやって、この次の作品を撮っていくかというのをこう自分で、この先考えなくちゃいけないなというふうに思ってるんですけど、とてもいい、役者と監督という関係を超えた共同作業がこの作品だけではないですけれども、この作品では実現できたなと思ってます。すいません。
She's got it.
I'd actually like to talk about Kiki Kirin. It's a bit of a long story. When she read the script, she understood instinctively that there was something about this movie that was very much about the physical presence. And her physical presence was the presence of someone who was old and falling apart. So she suggested to me that she was going to take out her false teeth, and she wasn't going to wash her hair, and she was going to expose the aging part of herself. This was even more than I had anticipated. In fact, I hadn't even thought about it. It was not something I knew. But she sensed it. And that kind of feedback from your actor, I've been very fortunate to be able to work with someone like this. And it has made me a very different person. She died in September, and I feel that I'm still deeply in mourning with a great sense of loss. I am in loss. I feel a sense of loss and not sure of where to go from here. But I feel also that it was something, this gift that was given to me in terms of making this last work.
Thank you.
I have to ask a question. The scene on the beach, you knew that her character was going to die? She knew that she was going to die?
あのシーンが最後に彼女の登場の最後になるというのは彼女自身は知ってました。ただ海辺で口元がかすかに動くんですけども、セリフを僕は書いていなくて、ありがとうございましたっていう海辺で遊んでいる自分の血のつながらない家族を見ながら彼女がありがとうってつぶやくんですけども、それは彼女のアドリブなんですね。でそれは撮影の現場では僕気づかなくて、後々編集をしながらなんて言ってるんだろうっていうのを探っていったら感謝の言葉をそこでつぶやいてた。そこからまた僕は逆算して物語を考えていくって作業をしたんですけれども、なので、はい、脚本は書いてはいたんですけども、彼女がその脚本を完成させてくれたという感じです。
So in in that scene in the summer, we did know at that point that it would be her last scene and that she would be dying. But there's this little part where she sort of whispers, "Thank you." And it was actually an ad-lib on her part. It was not in the script. I hadn't intended it. And I didn't even realize she was doing it when she did it. It wasn't until afterwards when I went back to edit the film that I noticed that she was mouthing something. And I played it again and again. And I realized that she was thanking the family, the strange collection of people that created her family. And from that point, although I had written a script, I went back and created the story from that one moment. So, in a sense, it was because of her that I could complete the story.
Thank you for that, wonderful actress Kiki Kirin. Nadine, on the completely younger scale of the spectrum, Zain Al-Rafea. What an extraordinary young performer that guy is.
Yeah, he's magic.
Obviously, you had to have somebody who's going to carry every single scene in the film. Is that your partner in the film?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, when sometimes you feel like you are destined to meet somebody in your life that will change something in you, or that will change you forever. I feel I was destined to find Zain and to collaborate with Zain on a certain mission in life. And so when I was writing the script, at some point you have to describe your actor, the character. So I was describing Zain, that he had to be smaller than his age because of malnutrition, physically smaller than his age because of malnutrition. He had to have these, eyes, sad eyes that show you how much he's been through in his life, and sort of witness of what of great and somehow hurtful things in his life, And so, this great personality, this great, this foul language, because he was raised on the streets and he's never been to school. So, yeah, I wrote all those descriptions. And when I met with the casting department, obviously, because what we do is we look in life for these characters that we had imagined while we were writing the script. So we start looking for them in real life, in those very, very difficult places in Lebanon, and neighborhoods and camps and detention centers. And so when I met my casting department and I was explaining to them and I was describing Zayn, I was actually thinking to myself, I'm asking a miracle of life. I will never be able to find this child. I will never be able to find a child who has all those amazing qualities in just one person, and this amazing wisdom, because he's seen so much in his life, and this great personality and this resourcefulness and this perseverance and everything. And I thought, but now when I think about it, Capernaum actually means chaos and miracles, because it's a place where Jesus made his first miracles, and it's also a place that Jesus cursed because for many reasons. So in French literature, it started being used to signify chaos, but also miracles. So I truly believe that there was a miracle that was happening the whole time when we were shooting, not only because of Zayn, but because of everything that was happening. Every single person that is in the film is not an actor. Every single person is actually coming with their own story, with their own struggle, with their own suffering, with their own self-expression. So we were adapting the whole time to their own personality. And I felt I wasn't entitled to invent this story. I wasn't entitled to imagine this story, because I haven't lived this deprivation and I haven't lived this marginalization. I thought I need just to be the vehicle for them to express themselves, for them to express their struggle. So in that way, yes, Zayn is my collaborator, and each one of those actors was my collaborator and still is my collaborator, because we did all this together. Every single one of them felt that they were part of this mission. This is what gave them wings. This is what made them have these amazing performances, because each one of them, they were struggling in their own life to even exist. Not only psychologically they don't exist, but even legally they don't exist, because most of them didn't have any papers even to prove that they exist. So they were not heard. Nobody would hear them. They would go to court. Nobody listens to them. They would go to So all of a sudden they are on a film set. And everything they have to say is important for every single one of us who were from the crew. So it was what they had to say was important. In that way, they were collaborating. This gave them wings. They started becoming heroes all of a sudden. Outside the shot, they're not visible. Outside the shoot, they're not even visible. Now here, whatever they have to say is so important. So yes, they were collaborating. And the fact that also, I just want to say another thank you, to my producer, who's my husband, who's actually a music composer, who did an amazing music for the film, but who didn't have any kind of experience making films. So he allowed this sort of, because he didn't have any experience, he allowed this sort of improvisation all the time. Sometimes we didn't even know what we were going to shoot the next day, because depending on what was going to happen today, we decided what we were going to shoot the next day.
It's a producer's nightmare, isn't it?
Sorry?
It's a producer's nightmare.
It is. Not, if you look at him now, he has a white beard. He didn't have a white beard when we started making this film. I swear to you. So we all physically changed after that. If you look at my, cinematographer, he lost his beard while he was shooting. My editor now has problem with his eyes. So it's like, it was a very, very difficult endeavor, all of it, in order to, be able to make that film happen.
How useful is it for you? You're a very accomplished actor as well. How useful is it for you when you're dealing with non-professional actors to guide
To
them
be
in the
in it.
ways of acting?
Yeah, I think it's very important, and it's very enriching to be able to know what an actor goes through and what he is expecting actually from the director who's directing him. This bonding, this very, very strong bonding, this chemistry that needs to happen between an actor and a director is actually, it's when you are yourself an actor that you know how it feels, you know what you need, you know what an actor needs. And this creates a very, very strong bonding in both cases, for me as a director and for me as an actor. In both cases, when I'm acting in somebody else's film, also being a director allows me to understand what he is going through at that moment. I know when to propose something, or when to talk even, or when to just be angry, or when not to be angry, because I know what a director is going through and how fragile he is at that moment. So obviously, of course, it's very enriching, and it allowed me to be very close to my actors and to create this chemistry. And sometimes we didn't even need to talk. Sometimes it was much bigger than that.
Florian, you mentioned earlier a little bit about Tom Schilling, and I agree with you. There's something special that happens with Tom on screen. He has to carry this film again. You know, it's a 3-hour and 10-minute film. You know, what is it about Tom Schilling, who's sitting over there, and he's a very unassuming young fellow, but it comes alive on screen?
You know, I mean, through Tom, I actually had a very interesting insight into acting and into the whole casting process that really has changed the way that I look at casting. And I hope Tom won't mind me telling that story, which was that, you know, with Sebastian Koch, I already knew, you know, I'd worked with him. I knew that he can do anything, and so, you know, I signed him up. I made him promise me that he'd do the part, although he was terrified by how villainous he had to be before before I started writing. But for the I hadn't worked with Tom Schilling before. I knew him since actually he was in high school and I was in film school, because I presented a short film at various festivals, and he had his first full-length feature as a lead actor, where he plays. It's a wonderful memoir by a German writer about a disabled student in a boarding school, and he played one of the leads in that part. And I always remembered that I'd met him. You know, that's always a good indication also about, does someone have incredible presence? I mean, he's someone, you know, if you meet Tom Schilling, you won't forget that you'll have met him, even though, as you rightly say, he's an unassuming presence. He's not someone who's loud or outgoing or so, but he has something that, you know, I've never seen in anyone else. And so, you know, I remembered that meeting, and although I'm 6'11", he didn't remember meeting me, but that's why I'm not an actor, and he's, so I followed what he did after that. He did a very lovely German black and white film, which in English was called A Coffee in Berlin. Very sweet movie, really worth seeing for anybody who wasn't clapping and hasn't seen it. And completely carried by Tom. He's with it in it every moment. And then he did a really fascinating miniseries, which in English was called A Generation War. It's a miniseries about a group of friends, some of them Jewish, some of them Nazis, some of them against the Nazis, who kind of are suddenly the Nazis come to power, and how does their friendship develop? It's a harrowing tale, and he plays a really fascinating character and just draws you in. You know, you can't stop watching. And so I was very aware of him as an actor, and he was the first name that you know, anybody would think of for this part, because he's so accomplished. And so I said, you know, well, I haven't worked with him. Let's do a casting session. We did a screen test and casting session, and you know, I didn't see what I needed to see, you know, then I tried him out with another actor, another female actor. Also, you know, didn't really work. He didn't quite have what I thought had to be there for the part. And I thought, you know, am I doing something wrong? And actually, in the course of this, we found the female lead, who was fantastic. And I think, how many casting sessions did we do? I think something like 6 or 7 or so. And then on the last one, Tom actually came to me and so we'd finished the casting session. Again, I hadn't seen what I wanted to see. And he gave me a letter that he'd written beforehand, a thick letter. And I thought, well, that's kind of strange. He said, well, read it when I'm gone. So, as soon as he was left, I was still in the casting director's office. I opened this letter, and it was a beautifully written letter. He's a very good writer. And in it, he said, I know that probably today you again didn't see what you needed to see. And I can tell you're never going to see it in the casting session with me, because to really give you all that complexity that character has to show, all that emotion, I have to feel wanted. And by definition, in a casting session, I can't feel wanted. I have to feel loved, I don't have to feel like you're examining me. So, I mean, it was an amazing letter. It was really, and I thought, it rang so true. He said, give me the part, but with full conviction, and I promise you from the very first day onwards, it'll be there. And I said, this goes against, this really goes against everything that, you're taught. You only give someone the part if they had, but at the same time, I knew it rang true, and this is a whole film about truth and searching truth and all that. And I said, and everybody around me was saying, if you haven't seen it in the casting sessions, don't do it. You're crazy. Don't be seduced by the fact that this guy's a great writer. He's obviously not, not right for the part, And I said, to really the dismay of everybody, I said, no, okay. I called him. I said, Tom, you have the part. And he said, really, you're not just saying that, because I seduced you with the letter. And I said, well, you kind of did seduce me with the letter, but I believe it. And I'll tell you, from the very first rehearsal onward, everything was there. It was all there, and it was just amazing, And yeah, so. It changed my view of what casting means, yeah. And I am so happy that I'm so happy that we ended up working together. I needed him for the film, and I was every day. I thought it was wonderful what Hiro said about the surprises in the editing room. That is something that you can rely on with Tom, and it's something every day. In the editing room, I'd have a new little gift there, so I'm really happy that we came together in that way.
Wonderful. I feel we've just skimmed the surface of all of these fascinating films, but we have to open the floor to questions from the audience now. So if you do have a question, a precise and concise question, please come down to this microphone here. Come on. I want to talk to Koreeda-san because he's just made a film in Paris with Catherine Deneuve and Juliette Binoche as mother and daughter, so I can't wait for that. But we can't talk about that because we have a question.
Hi there. So first of all, pleasure to see everybody here. How's it going? Awesome. Second of all, I'm a film student at the moment, and it's just such an honor to be among so many working and talented people in the film. And I just wanted to ask a question. So when you're in a situation like this, where you see people that are a lot further down the path that you want to go down, what sort of things do you find emotional and inspiring? And what sort of things can you carry with you into future projects that you do to hopefully get to this point?
Interesting. Lucas, you've just made one film. Perhaps you can talk about...
I feel like I'm still very close to where he is. So I feel like I'm not the one who's supposed to answer that question. But, okay.
What is inspiring you and bringing...
I was looking at Alfonso earlier on. I was like, am I here? Is this happening? So no, it's what really inspires me is watching people really make personal films, putting themselves out there and allowing themselves to be vulnerable by making something. I've gotten so much appreciation, extra appreciation for people that put themselves out there and do it and try it and succeed and fail and do all those things, but want to really tell something in a personal way, in a truthful way, and say it. I think that's the biggest thing to constantly remember, is to dare to be vulnerable and speak about what you want to speak about. And then what inspires me is all these people here. So yeah, maybe they should give you better advice.
Alfonso, how do you keep it getting inspired?
Well, I think that you're at the peak of your creative life right now. It's not going to get any better. I think that when years happen, what you're trying actually is to regain and to connect with that impulse that make you do things in the first place. So I find it very inspiring. It's the other way around. You're looking for inspiration in the older generations. Is that I find myself that if I want, for instance, to do the film I just did, Roma, it was about trying to regain the reason why I love cinema, and that I have lost the way through the years, So I think it's pretty much you have the answers there. And what inspired me has always been history of cinema. I don't think there's something more beautiful and more inspiring for a filmmaker than the history of cinema. I mean, from Lumiere to these guys here, it's just fascinating.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you for having me. Thank you so much for holding this. My question is, working with child actors. There's the great cast of child actors in these films and the performances that you pull from these children. I was very curious about the rehearsal process and working with them, especially Koreeda-san's like your child actors. There's a lot of very strong vulnerability, especially with that young girl, and also from your work from Nobody Knows. I saw that. I'm just very curious about each director's process and how they're able to get such vulnerable and moving performances. Thank you. Arigatou gozaimasu.
Thanks. Why don't we just ask Koreeda-san directly?
子どもの演出に関して言うともう15年ぐらい子どもたちには台本を渡さずに、当日朝集まって今日こういうの撮るよっていう説明だけをして、あとは僕が口伝えに耳元で、お父さんこう言うからじゃあ翔太こう言ってごらんっていう形でこうセリフを音として耳から入れて、口から出すっていう文字を与えずに現場でこう状況だけ説明して作っていくってその場で、初めてその空間で初めてその自分が言うべき言葉を耳にするっていう状況で撮影をしてまして、なので撮影が終わるまで彼らはこの映画がどういう物語かというのは知らずに、瞬間瞬間をこう生きてもらうというやり方をしてます。オーディションの段階からそういうやり方が馴染む、その方がうまくいく、その方が楽しい子どもたちをこう見つけていくっていう作業をするんですけれども、今回の2人もそういうやり方をして、選びました。
So, in the past 15 years that I began to work with children, I have used the same method. I have never given a script to them, so they don't know the whole story. Each time we take a specific shot, I explain to them what's happening, and then I verbally give them their lines. They never read anything, they never prepare anything. So, for example, in a specific scene, I would say, okay, so the father is going to say this and he's going to do that, and Shota, you're going to say this in response to what your father says. So it's always from mouth to ear. And it's created only within that space. The words are created only at that time. And until the film is finished, they don't know the whole story. So they're living very much in moment to moment. And when the audition happens, I actually make a point of choosing children who seem to respond well to that and who get excited at the thought of just coming in and learning just working on the film in that way. So I notice what type of children are suitable for this method.
耳を使うのが大事じゃないかなっていうふうに、それはもしかすると子どもだけじゃないかもしれませんけれども、子どもは特に耳をうまく使うようにっていうことをこうやります。
I think it's important for maybe not even just children, but to use your ears. So that's how, so it comes, the information, the tone and everything comes in through the ear. And they become good at using their ears.
Thank you.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Mika Shaprut. My question is about the cinematic language, and I obviously want to thank you all for making such incredible, moving films and honoring yourselves and telling stories that inspire us all to, honor our humanity, and something that connects us, such as film, is something so sacred to me, and I value it so much. So thank you for carrying that tradition on. My question surrounds the idea of seeing cinema in real life, and a lot of you seem to have created something so spontaneous and doing it in the moment. And so I'm curious if you could share a story either from earlier on as an artist or in the process of making these films as to when cinema actually translated into reality. Thank you.
Alfonso, you talked earlier a little bit about no. What were you going to say, Nadine?
Are you looking at me?
No. You had just mentioned that you felt you'd lost your love of cinematic language, which is why you wanted to go to Roma. What had gone?
Well, no, that happened way before.
But what do you feel? Why did you feel you need to refresh yourself like this?
No, it's not that. I mean, when definitely that happened was I did a couple of films in Hollywood, and I felt I was losing my way, and it's when I decided to do it to Mama Tambien, because I had to. Thank you. I had to regain the reason why. That's the reason I was saying I had to reconnect to why I wanted to make cinema in the first place, and I'm referring back to that age in which you have the answers, So.
Do you have to go back to Mexico to do that? Do you think?
Well, it happened that in my case it was that, in Roma it was more about trying to regain my sense of being, of identity, of who I am, But in terms of because your question specifically was about the sense of real time and reality, right?
Yes, and creating something spontaneous from the heart and from your intuition. And I guess from where that truly comes from, that source of creation is this film for you. You were the cinematographer, you were the director, and the writer. In some regard, there wasn't really a script. So creating something so loosely, but trusting that intuition.
No, there was a script.
Oh, right.
Very detailed.
But it wasn't
script,
shared with the actors, right?
But
Sorry.
it was not shared with anyone.
Right.
With not the actors, the technicians, nobody had the script.
So was it really life itself guiding you through that process?
Because I think every director has a different process. I don't think there's one way of doing cinema.
Right.
And I think that each one of us we're trying just to find our own process. I'm listening now to Hero, and it's a completely different process. But there's a lot of stuff that he does that I also do. For instance, with children, generally speaking, I agree. I don't like to show them the screenplay. They should not know anything about it except the moment. In this film, nobody had the screenplay, and it was shot in real time, in perfect chronological order. Each actor knew every morning the bits of pieces that I will tell them. Sometimes I will give to some of them written dialogue, and to the others I would give specific instructions. Those instructions were contradicting each other. So when I was rolling camera, it was a chaos. It was like a traffic jam. But that's life. Life is not neat, the thing in which things happen. And if in the film there's a scene in which the mother asks the kids to write a letter to the father. And so I tell Marina, who plays the mother, just the older son is the one that reminds you most of the father and is the one that has the biggest bond with the father. So you have to make sure that she writes a really good letter to the father. And then I go secretly with the kid and said, in the moment that your mom starts talking to you, you just leave. You know? And it was just, my job as a director was just to witness moments of people just reacting the way that they were reacting in real life. But this specific process of this film, I don't think, I mean, I'm very curious to hear the process of each one of you guys, because I think each process, everybody finds their own way. I mean, I wish there was an easy answer.
That was beautiful.
This notion of, like you said, chaos, this notion of organized chaos, sometimes is so important for us, I think, as filmmakers. Also, because I feel the same way. I don't like to give my actors the script, because also there's this element of surprise in life. In life, you don't know what's going to come next. So when you're expecting life also to impose itself in a way on whatever you are doing, this is what you're supposed to do. It's very difficult for me as a filmmaker to say, okay, so this is what I'm going to shoot, and we're going to start from point A to B, and that's it, and expect this to happen. It's even sometimes a bit disappointing. I'm expecting life to just surprise me and impose itself on me. That's why the element of surprise is very important for the actors too, not to know what's going to happen next and not give them any, I mean, obviously each filmmaker has his own method, but in the case of our film, sometimes things would happen really that were completely, like life was, sometimes I didn't know if life was imitating art or art was imitating life, and things would happen exactly the way it was. Like, for example, one of my actors in the my main actress in the film gets arrested in the film. 2 days after she gets arrested in the film, she gets arrested in real life, and she goes through the exact same things that were happening in the film. And not only that, the mother and father of Jonas, the small child who's actually a girl in real life, her name is Treasure, get arrested with our main actress. So when we are filming those scenes, when this little girl is alone without her mother, she is actually without her mother in real life. And sometimes you wonder, what is happening? What are we filming? This is not anymore the fiction that was planned. This is now we're witnessing real life happening in front of us. And it's amazing to embrace that and not to be afraid of that, not to be afraid of sometimes, the film slipping away from your own hands and going in a different direction. But when you have a solid script, when you know your material so well, this shouldn't scare you. Sometimes it's even so much more interesting and more nurturing for you as a filmmaker to go with the flow and to go with whatever life is giving you at that moment.
Yes, and your preconceptions. Give me an example. The scene of the birth of the child, of the stillbirth. The way in which my conversations with Livo, what really happened, is that when they came with the baby and said, you want to see your baby, she didn't want to see her baby. She was terrified about the death of her kid. And the way I did that scene is that I staged everything with real doctors and real nurses, and she didn't know what was going to happen. So when you see her real reaction, and when the doctor asked, you want to see your baby, she said yes. But it was an honest reaction, so I have to surrender myself not to my preconception or even to the historical fact, but what is the moment of truthfulness in that moment. Even if my old being of other films that I've done that are more controlling, I would say, okay, cut. This is not what should be, but it's about just surrendering yourself to the actors, to the process, to the moment.
Thank you.
Thank you
I'm
all.
sorry we're going to have to end it there. But thank you to our brilliant directors. What a wonderful, insightful afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
Very interesting.